within 2 or 3 weeks, I had resigned from my job. I sold everything that I had owned that didn't fit in my Mini Cooper. It wasn't coming with me. And off I went, and I had no idea what was on the other side. I just trust, and it felt right. It felt like it was exactly what I was looking for. So I moved into the trailer, and for 6 months, I didn't work. I just started unpacking the shit. It was a test to my soul and to my will, but I know why I did that. It was something that had to happen for me to shed, literally, to purge the last of what was remaining.
The hospitality industry is rife with addiction. Kimberly Flear is a person in recovery who had to walk away from her career to save her life. We didn't talk too much about war stories or the experiences that brought her to the decision, but we did talk a lot about what she did to find a life free from it all. From breathwork and frequencies to meditation and manifestation, this was a great conversation that left both Donna and I with some great new insights, and I can't wait to share them with you. But before we jump in, what's up? My name's Dan, podcaster, keynote speaker, and advocate, and this is Hard Knocks Talks, your addictions podcast. If you're interested in fostering productive conversations about substance use in your community, organization, or event, reach out to me at daniel@hardknockstalks.com to learn more about our public speaking and live on-stage podcast productions. And with that, let's jump into this conversation with Kimberly Flear.
This is Hard Knocks Talks.
What's up, Kimberly? How are you?
What's up, Daniel? Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome. Thank you for reaching out a little while ago. What really got me about what you wanted to talk about was we don't get a lot of people from the restaurant industry, and you seem very passionate about bringing awareness to some of the challenges that not only you face, but you've seen other people face. So why don't we jump off there? What makes you passionate about talking about addiction in the restaurant industry?
Yeah, well, it started a long time ago. My industry experience, and through that, I jumped into the industry to forget everything else that was going on in my life, and so it gave me the space to do that. And so, 25 years I worked in the industry, and within that, I was a function addict, and I was able to, maintain my job and my addictions, and it fueled it. And then I got sober in 2020, and the big thing for me was I lost 4 jobs in a row for drinking on shift, super impactful. And then in 2021, I lost a friend who overdosed, who was also an industry veteran. So with all of these experiences that I had been through, something sparked me, and I realized that there was a gap in the system of care. There was no resources offered. There was no conversations being had. And I think when I had lost my friend, that really, like I said, sparked something. Like, what if he had been offered help? What if he had been offered, accommodation or some kind of support network? Maybe things would have been a little bit different.
Was it the restaurant industry that sort of got you into the problematic drinking?
I think that trauma is the main component for a lot of us who come from a background of addiction. But I think what it gave me, it was almost like a playground for me. So it just fuel on the fire, it gave me the attention I didn't get when I was a child, the accessibility to drugs and alcohol, the party scene, and also like that kind of misfit culture. You don't fit into the normal society rules. That was me, that was my rebellious, curious state at the age of 15 when I started, and it just from there continued. But the prevalence is it's a cultural thing. And you're right, it's incentivized, but to speak about it is full of stigma. Nobody's able to do that. So
yeah, like you cross a certain line and all of a sudden the scale tips the other way, right?
Absolutely.
So tell us about, before we move too far ahead here past this, I'm interested to know when you decided to make that decision. Now, you mentioned losing a friend really awoke that desire to make a decision. But was there clues to you before that happened or was this like, boom, your whole world changed? You know, because like for me, like I knew for a while before I actually made the decision, right? That things were out of hand. Like, was it like that for you?
Like to get sober? Oh, absolutely. I started working on myself probably almost 3 years before I took the final leap to get sober. I started dabbling in energy work, EFT tapping, quantum healing, those kind of practices
Mm-hmm.
before I took the leap. So what really got me was I started elevating my frequency before I quit. So it actually got harder and harder for me to use. By the end of it, it was depressing. It was full of anxiety because my frequency wasn't aligned with the alcohol and the drugs anymore. But as a habitual being who was still experiencing pain, I was still using. So over time, the more I continued these energy practices, the easier it was. And then finally I took the leap
Mm.
on September 1st, 2020.
Mm.
And I kind of led up to it with, I like doing self challenges. And so I made a deal with myself that I could go from September to January 1st. So 4 months without a drink. And that's where it began for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I did 30 days of yoga to begin the journey. And that's where it started. And I did the 30 days and I just kept going, did the 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. And then
1 month at a
um,
time.
things started 1 month at a time. Things really
Mm-hmm.
started opening up for me. Yeah, pretty quickly.
Hmm. So, were this energy work and the things that you listed off there before, was this an attempt to feel better, or was this an attempt like, I'm still? Were you trying to quit using and drinking, or were you just trying to feel better with these new practices?
I was trying to quit using.
Okay, cool,
Yeah,
cool.
I had a coach. I had someone that I worked with on a regular basis
Uh huh.
for that reason, and she also came from a background of lived experience. So
Okay.
um, I kept showing up, and it just kept getting harder and harder to continue to maintain the addiction.
Yeah. When you made the transition, was there any grieving your old life?
Oh yeah, um, there it was wretched. I don't know about anybody else's experience, but I started facing everything that I suppressed. So even though I was elevating my frequency with these practices, when you removed the alcohol and drugs, that's when everything really started coming a surface.
Uh huh.
So it was yeah, wretched. It was a lot of anger, a lot of rage. I faced things that I hadn't looked at since childhood.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can relate in some ways. I often look at the first 3 years of my recovery, or 2 years for sure. Like the putting down the drugs and alcohol was the easy part, but some things happened in my addiction that left me just filled to the top with confusion and resentment, and that resentment is deadly, in my opinion. Um, Tell us a little bit about how you learned to. I mean, maybe not get past it, but how did you learn to? What's the word I'm looking for? Integrate.
So the first thing I did is I removed myself from the restaurant industry. I had to take a step back and I had to really evaluate that and what it was doing with me. And I took on work that facilitated not drinking. like,
Mm.
so I worked for a local fisherman and I delivered seafood around the city of Vancouver, which was super rad. But I had to drive for a living. So that eliminated a little bit of it.
Yeah.
And then, so the integration piece, I mean, that's always ongoing. I think I'm still integrating it 3.5 years later.
Yeah.
Um, but the practices that I did, just maintaining those daily practices, the self-care practices
Yeah.
is how I got through it all. Because I
Yeah.
didn't do 12-step. I didn't do any fellowship programs. I did it on my own with the connection to my higher self, my divine self, I like to call her, very, very spiritually connected to nature, to my breath, to yoga. I had to get back into my body. So every practice that I took upon myself to do was bringing me back into my body and out of my mind and out of that disassociation.
Mm-hmm. So what brought you to yoga? Like, was that just like happenstance?
I think, well, I lived in Vancouver, so there was a lot of yoga going on around me.
Mm-hmm.
um, I I just enjoyed what it did. I remember I started going with a friend. We would just go to a yoga studio, and I just really enjoyed it. And it just started there. And I thought the yoga piece for me, it was 30 days show up on the mat instead of at the bottle shop. And so every time I came home from work, which is normally when I would, hang a left to the shop, I would just go right, and I would go home and I would hit the yoga mat.
Mm.
Now, with that said, I didn't drop all of my addictions at once. It was like phased, right? So even though I was still doing that, like cigarettes were my friend at the time too, right? So there was still
Yeah.
other things I was reaching for. I had to kind of do it in stages. But the yoga piece for me is the body connection. I still think that it's one of the most valuable things that we need to do is get back into our bodies. So that was where the yoga came in.
Do you ever, sorry, go ahead and finish your thought.
No, please, that was all.
Okay. Now for me in breath work, I know this to be true, but and it's likely very true with yoga as well. But when I get deep into my breath work, I experiences, releases, things will come up, and sometimes I even will hear, and I don't want to sound crazy, but like I'll hear a voice, right, and I'll hear things, and maybe I'm just because like it's a psychedelic breath work, right? Like these things happen, right? So whether it's real, whether it's not, I tend to believe that there's something more to it than just some sort of vivid hallucination. But is that the case for you? Like when you're doing your yoga practices, do things come to the surface and allow you to like experience them again and make peace with them, or trying to understand a little bit deeper?
I think the key word that you just said there is deeper. It allows me to go in deeper, to stay in the present. Yoga for me is present moment, back in the body and present moment. Breath is where I can tap into those deeper states of energy that are buried, that haven't been looked at. It allows me the space to connect to other parts of me. It creates spaciousness,
Yeah.
I think, to the breath. And on the psychedelic piece, I mean, that's plant medicine. So when you say like you might sound crazy, I don't really think that that's crazy at all. I think that that's just a societal definition of what you're speaking about. Because plant medicine is spiritual, it's powerful, and it can give you a lot of answers if you're looking for them with the right, purest intention.
Well, and I'm not specifically talking about plant medicine right now. I when I look for breath works on YouTube, I usually do guided ones, right? And some of
Oh
them
yeah.
they're like DMT release or psychedelic or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. And I tend to I've experienced enough of it now to know that there is some truth to that. Like I see and I experience things, and I would even call them visions. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I've also done some work with psilocybin over the past number of months too. That's been, I don't know, quite helpful for me. Have you walked that path?
I have microdosed psilocybin, but I haven't done a plant medicine ceremony. I do a lot of breath work ceremonies,
Mm-hmm.
where, again, when I was introduced to breath work at the beginning of my recovery journey, it allowed me, it was like a natural dopamine high. It felt so good and so
Yeah.
relatable that I kept going back. And I was like, this,
Yeah.
this shit's amazing.
It
Like
is amazing.
you give me something that feels good and I'm going to go back for it.
Yeah.
And luckily this is this is an organic, holistic approach to self-care as opposed to, the street drugs I was doing. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, I haven't, I believe that I will do a plant medicine ceremony, whether it's ayahuasca or psilocybin, when
Mm-hmm.
the time is right and it comes to me.
Yeah.
I don't search for those experiences. I allow them to come to me.
Yeah. Yeah. And they'll call you. That's been my
Yeah.
experience. And I've been told that by my shaman, like Mama Aya, she'll call you.
Yeah.
So, but tell us more, because we spoke last week and you shared with me a little bit about how you went like completely recluse for like the first 6 months or so. Like you went out to the woods and like lived off like the land, so to speak. Like tell us about how that came to be.
Yeah, a bit wild. Yeah. I mean, it's no one that knows me was surprised that I did something like this. I've definitely lived quite a wild, kind of fly by the seat of my pants kind of experience since a young age. So
Mm-hmm.
this in particular, I was about a year sober. So it was in fall of 2021. And It was full swing COVID. Um, things just, my job was going well and everything on the outside was going well, but internally, something was really uncomfortable. Something needed to shift, something needed to change. I wasn't feeling like I belonged anymore in society and what was going on around me. It put a wedge between a lot of me and other people. And so, only being a year sober, that left me in a very vulnerable place for triggers and so on. So, I quit my job, sold everything I owned. I did it pretty quickly. I found a trailer on the Sunshine Coast. So I was living in Vancouver at the time, and it was actually Lionsgate, so August 8th. I had just come out of a meditation, this beautiful ceremony, and I just went online and there was a trailer for rent in the forest on the Sunshine Coast. And I thought, well, that looks pretty good for me. And I took it as my out. And within 2 or 3 weeks, I had resigned from my job. I sold everything that I had owned that didn't fit in my Mini Cooper. It wasn't coming with me.
Wow, that's
Pretty
exclusive.
downsizing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And off I went, and I had no idea what was on the other side. I just trust. I just really tap into that God-given intuition that we have, the discernment, and it felt right. It felt like it was exactly what I was looking for. So I moved into the trailer, and for 6 months I didn't work. I just started unpacking the shit. I really dedicated my time and my energy to self-inquiry, to self-realization, personal development, creativity, silence, stillness. I tapped into nature. I tapped into the river for my water, which was really fun when the river froze and then I, didn't have any running water. There was mice. There was mornings I would wake up and it was like 3 degrees and you could see my breath. I'm like, what the F am I doing? But something just, it was a test to my soul and to my will. But I know why I did that. It was something that had to happen for me to shed, literally, to purge the last of what was remaining. Because when I pull back and now look in hindsight, after that experience, my world has opened up to things that in a short amount of time I never thought possible. Yeah.
What was it like driving? Like, so you quit your job, right? And you sold and gave away all your shit and you're driving. Like, so I'm like, what was that moment like when you started that car and you drove and all of that shit was behind you? Were you like, this is amazing, I can't believe I just did that? Or was it like fear?
It wasn't the first time I had done something like this.
First time in recovery?
First time in recovery.
There we go.
And first time with intentions of wanting to do what I did. Right. So in the past it was running. It was moving to try and escape myself or to escape circumstances or shady people that I was involved with or things like that. Right. So the intentions this time were different. So I think a lot of excitement because it was what everybody wanted to do, but nobody had the balls to do it, especially during that time. And I'm not saying I'm special or lucky, but like that's one thing I pride myself on is taking leaps of faith. Just go for it. Now with that said, as we spoke earlier, I'm single, I'm sober, I don't have kids, I don't have pets, I'm not married, I don't have anything that really anchors me in.
I'm like, what do you even do all day?
Yeah.
What do you get mad about?
Yeah, it's me versus myself, I'll tell you. That's the story. I fill my days with really good, wholesome things, to be honest. I'm really proud of the way that I live my life and the quality of life that I have now. And because of that trailer experience and because I put myself through that and I was able to look at the rage and the anger, those were two just big ones for me in recovery that I think I might have healed like a lineage of. But being in that place just alone and with nature in like the craziest of weather, and it was a remarkable experience.
Speaking of leaps of faith, Let's see here. My friend Todd, Bunny Hugs and Mental Health, fellow
Nice.
Saskatchewan mental health podcaster. Good to see you tonight here, Todd. You want to check out his podcast, links in the description below. Todd says,
I'd like to do that too, but I'm on SSRIs. Not safe to do while taking them. And unfortunately, that's a fact.
Yeah.
And my friend Barb.
I was lucky to have a friend take me to a breathwork workshop once. But how would you recommend other people explore the practice if they're interested in trying it?
Barb, YouTube, I know I've talked to you about this, but thank you for queuing that question up. Can you add to that question? I mean, you don't know what I told Barb, but do you have anything for that?
I don't know. But I mean, what I would tell anyone, tapping in, I think that really, if you could start with the small practice of taking 10 intentional breaths every day from the heart space. Don't even get yourself wrapped up in doing an intense Wim Hof DMT breath work right away. Just start with connecting to your breath, just noticing that it's there, that it's your life force. And I think, I said this to someone recently, that if everybody just stopped every day and took 3 intentional breaths from the heart space, it just really opens up a lot of spaciousness for us. So that's what I would say, is to start gentle.
Yeah. And I didn't, it was tough for me to buy into breath work, but I mean, it was actually Donna, to be honest. She's just sort of nudges me. She never really pushes me too hard to do anything. She's just and finally I'm like, fine, give me the damn breath work. So she sent me one and I did it. And it just whoa, you get the hands going numb, and you get the lightheadedness, and then you start to it opens your mind, and it just that was the first time that I'd ever been able to meditate, truly experience what I perceived as quiet. Because I'm my mind is always going. Todd's talking about squirrels here in the chat, and I can relate, man. My brain doesn't shut the hell up, and I've told Donna in the past, there's movies that my brain will develop entire movies over the most innocuous thing, something will fall off the table, and my brain will tell an entire story of how things went completely wrong with that. So, and now the world has somehow ended, so, but anyways, I'm way off in the woods here. So, speaking about being in the woods, now you went out and you experienced this, you did all of this inner work, you connected with the breath, there was, there was mice.
Yeah.
And so how did you know it was time to come back? How did you know it was time to step away from that space in the woods?
Well, the bank account, number one. No.
Western civilization.
Yeah. I knew my time was up. It just felt right. Again, I journal a lot. And I really wanted to live in a structure again. I was kind of done with the Airstream. It was a super rad trailer. It was refurbished, had a big bathtub and this quartz counter table. It was really nice for an old night. It was a 1971, so it was a 50-year-old Airstream.
Wow.
So drafty. But so I was kind of done with that lifestyle of living in the trailer. But I knew that there was something else out here on the coast for me. And so it's quite an interesting story, because when I knew that I wanted to leave the trailer, I actually couldn't find anywhere to live. Housing on the Sunshine Coast is a big challenge. And so it was coming up to April 1st when my lease was up for the trailer. And the owner of the trailer had agreed that I could stay if I wanted for an extremely outrageous price. So I didn't want to do that, but I thought I was going to have to. So I went and picked up the lease from her on the 20-something of March. And I put it away and I didn't sign it. And I had a hot bath and I got out that night and I went on Craig's. And I was kind of been daydreaming. The moral of this is I had been daydreaming about this cabin. I really love getting into meditation and dreaming things into being. And so I knew that there was something else, but I couldn't find it. So I thought I was going to have to stay in the trailer. And anyways, I found the cabin days before I was going to sign the lease. I found this beautiful treehouse for rent and I met the landlord. And so the stars aligned for me. I don't really know. Again, it was just I was meant to be here and I I knew that intuitively. I just had
Mm-hmm.
to be patient.
Mm-hmm.
And then I found it. And it's quite fascinating that where I live now was almost a split image of what I was imagining in my meditations. Like, I think I kind of started realizing this frequency thing and really like understanding that if we do tune our frequency to whatever it is we want, we can manifest it.
Mm-hmm.
And I did. And so I live in a beautiful little custom treehouse now, right on the water, right on the ocean, tucked in the trees with a landlord that's amazing.
Right on the
I
ocean. Can you
pay,
can you see the ocean from where you are now?
yeah, it's right there.
Get right the hell out. What? No. Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So yeah. And like, I just want to speak to the power that we have in our minds to create the reality that we want. I'm not lucky. I come from nothing. I come from less than nothing. And I experienced a lot of shit too, but I sank everything into believing in anything is possible. Like, it's not just a cliche. It's not just a meme. Um, I don't fight for my limitations. I
Oh,
didn't,
unpack
people,
that.
Hmm.
Hang on a sec. Unpack that for me. What do you mean you don't fight for your limitations? What does that mean?
well, in so many times I hear people express what it is that they want from life, but then as soon as they say that, they vocalize what it is they want, they come up with the reason why they can't have it,
Hmm.
right?
Right.
I would like this, but, and I don't
But.
know, I started looking at that language that we use to speak to ourselves. And I started noticing my buts and
Uh-huh.
my resistance to things. And who's
Mm-hmm.
creating that? Just my mind.
Wow. So fighting for your limitations, I'm still trying to completely conceptualize that in my head. So what you're saying is it's almost like people fight for reasons not to do things.
I think so. And I don't think, I'm not saying this from any way of judgmental. It's just like that comfort zone that we don't want to come out of when we don't know anything else,
Mm-hmm.
right? Just like at the beginning when you had said, like, you were talking, I think about your breath work, and you said, I might sound crazy, but who says that that's like, I don't believe that that's crazy. That's just something that, right? Am I
Yeah.
making maybe much sense here?
Yeah.
So fighting for limitations is, yeah, fighting for all the reasons why you can't do it. I
Huh.
really look at all the ways I can do it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and maybe I can relate to that, and to some extent, because I mean, I was living on student loan in the middle of COVID, and I started this whole thing that we're at now from a
Yeah.
laptop at my low income rental property, and I'm grateful and cautious to say that we just had an accepted offer on a home that's got a giant studio space in the basement, and it's just like, and you know what? I have a close friend. Well, not a close friend, but a good friend. She's a nurse here in Saskatchewan, and she's very into metaphysical and into the natural medicines and things like that. And she came to the studio one time and she said, "Dan, I had a vision, and you're going to have a beautiful studio by the end of 2024." And I was
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I believed it, but I couldn't see it. But I just
Yeah.
like I keep, and it's not, and like,
Well,
it's
it's hard to not be cautiously optimistic
yeah,
in today's world, right?
yeah.
You know,
So
so
yeah,
that kind of puts a damper on
Totally.
things sometimes, but
yeah,
and
yeah.
maybe that aligns with that thinking of all the knots or why it won't work or why it can't work or all those things.
Well, and it's scary because even like success is scary too. With what they say about like with, and this may be like an egotistical thing to say, but it's the only thing I can think of. Is like, with great power comes great responsibility. Like, what if it doesn't work? Well, what if it does? Holy shit! Now I got to do all that stuff. So, but
And how much you would learn if it didn't work,
and
right? So this is the
that's the
thing, right? So
thing.
if it doesn't work, that's
Yeah,
okay too. That's
yeah.
totally okay,
You know,
right?
and
Who says that that's not okay?
and that's something that has shifted in my mind, and like, I'm not saying that I don't feel the fear anymore. Like, I definitely feel the fear. Like, I feel lots of fear, however, having said that, it's a different kind of fear now, that it's accompanied by almost a sense of gratitude, because I know that I'm going to learn something from what's coming, and that it's going to change my life. So
Yeah.
because I've been through enough shit sober now to know that like every time I go through a hard time, I come out with like some valuable lessons or something new and amazing that I didn't even see coming.
Or doing things that you are afraid of, because to me that's a sign that you should do it.
Mm,
That's your inside spark saying, tell a different story. Do
mm-hmm,
something that makes you uncomfortable. Do something that you're afraid of. Like me coming on this podcast was, I have, this is one of my first shows. So I'll be vulnerable and say, of course, like there's fear involved, and there's, what if I mess this up? Or,
mm-hmm.
there's so many things that are present when being seen and heard. But if you do them anyway, I'm just going to keep learning. I'm just going to
Yeah,
get better.
yeah,
Right. And the only person that's going to judge this experience is myself.
yeah, yeah. And in fact, I would argue that at the end of it all, when I'm on my my last hurrah on my way out of this place, I fear not chasing it. I fear not growing. I fear not doing the things, and at the end of it all being like, I wish I would have done that, you know?
Yeah.
Because what if it would have worked, and what if I could have changed, what if I could have like broke the generational curses that my family
Yeah.
is, all of the things, what if I didn't
What
do
if I
that?
can
And
change the culture in
yeah,
hospitality? What
yeah,
if I can
yeah.
actually be the voice of possibility and
Mm-hmm.
start shining light and
Yeah,
helping people that are quietly struggling with addiction, because
yeah,
I couldn't have been the only one.
yeah.
Mm.
What a beautiful segue into that. Um, so you are advocating, you are out here speaking, and you're manifesting as we speak.
Yeah.
You want to get louder about the lack of systems or of care around the hospitality industry, because that's where you came from and that's where you had a lot of struggles. Tell us about when you came to that realization that you could be that voice.
Oh yeah, I remember when the day I came up with Last Call Coaching. So that's my business that is here to focus on and support the hospitality industry.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because I had taken my recovery coach training. I had started that pathway, and I hadn't realized yet that this was what I was going to do, until I was actually in meditation sitting on the rock, and I was kind of like not sure what direction to take with the recovery coaching, because it's for I wanted like a direction, like a niche, but it came out of nowhere, and it was like help the hospitality industry. So as soon as I had that spark, I just knew, because
Mm-hmm.
when I pull back and I look at my life from like a bird's eye view, which I like to do, what it showed me is a full circle. Like I couldn't think, when I sat with it, I couldn't think of anything else that I'd rather do with the rest of my life, or any other cause I would rather support, or anything I would rather have a voice about. It was so crystal clear.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
also, it really, everything I've learned up until today is going to help me succeed at this. All of my skills are transferable. My lived experience, my passion wasn't just like it shine in the industry, but it's also going to shine through this. And then of course, education and training, to allow me to be an expert and to be qualified to do what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
But I just started putting those puzzle pieces together. And then gratefully in September of last year, I came across a self-employment program for people who are underemployed or unemployed or on disability. And basically this program has helped me. They give me a living allowance, and they've helped me set up the business. It's been like one of the biggest gifts in my recovery journey to,
Mm-hmm.
to get this business off the ground going. So I've just had an immense amount of support. It's really been incredible.
Is there a commonality between people who are coming to you from the hospitality industry?
I think there's a lot of fear in speaking up. I think there's not a lot of recovering out loud in the industry, and this is changing.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's the commonality. I think there's a lot of fear to speak up,
Mm-hmm.
um, because it is so normalized. And
Mm-hmm.
and I think as I'm embarking on this, I'm curious, like, who is really willing to make those changes, because it's been culturally accepted for so long.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And
Thousands,
so
thousands of years?
thousands of years. Yeah,
Thousands? I think the
thousands.
oldest pub in the world is like 1,300 years old over in Scotland or something, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot of
So,
staff drinks.
yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah. So, Yeah, I mean, that's something that I'll have to kind of expand on as this journey unfolds, really is really uncovering the specific and unique needs and challenges that this industry faces.
Let's take a quick break, read out some sponsors. I'll be right back.
Cool.
Okay, fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, known as FASD, is a developmental disorder that can impact anyone. It affects the daily lives of over 4% of Canadians, but with support and services, individuals with FASD can thrive. Learn more at saskfasdnetwork.ca. If you're interested in fostering productive conversations about substance use in your community, organization, or event, reach out to me at daniel@hardknockstalks.com to learn more about our public speaking and live podcast production opportunities. If you're interested in checking out another Canadian mental health podcaster, there's also a link to that in the show notes below. To make contact and to learn more about today's sponsors, to check out our new merch, or if you want to show us some love and buy us a coffee, all of those links are also in the show notes below. I'm interested to know, like, because it sounds like you're a bit of an advocate too. Are you doing any sort of advocacy work?
I'd like to think that I do, not in that large spectrum. I think that's still to come, and that's actually where the pathway for me to meet you came from. Was I was inquiring about some mental health policies through the government and what their kind of what supports are there for the hospitality sector. Now, in my own right now, I work with a hospitality outreach program. I host the women's meeting every Tuesday morning. And then I also work with Pivot Recovery Society here on the Sunshine Coast, where we offer recovery and trauma support to the community, because as most communities were severely impacted by the opioid crisis that's happening and the homelessness and so on. So I do some work with them to help bridge the gap between harm reduction and recovery. That's kind of what our focus is.
So what are your thoughts around harm reduction then?
Oh, good question. I think that there's a place for harm reduction, of course. I think there's also a need for a continuum into recovery.
And I agree. And I had a doctor on a few weeks ago, and he says, like, what was the words he used? Like, people turn it into a noun.
Yes.
They say it's as though you can put the harm reduction in a box and give it to someone and said, here is the harm reduction.
Yeah.
Like it's just like one thing, but it's not. It's like a whole gamut of things. So when you're talking about like, and that can go as far as housing, that can go as far as assistance with systems navigation, which I think that you were talking a little bit about there, and the regulated supply and the supervised access, stuff like that. So, but you're working with an organization that is trying to bridge the spectrum between harm reduction and recovery. Can you unpack that a little bit for us? Like, what does that look like in your day?
Like, what are we doing? Of course. Yep. So we've created,
what are you even doing?
What are you doing? So we have just put together so it's Pivot Recovery Society is the one that I'm speaking about. And we've just put together, we got a grant from Red Cross, and we put together a trauma recovery support training, an online learning system where we're going to give that out for free to people who want more education around recovery, a better understanding of what addiction is and how we can support these people on the streets. Yes, safe supply is keeping them alive. We want safe needles. We want like that. Yes. But we want we want people to also have the know-how to speak recovery. Right. So it's giving them the language, and equipping them with the tools and the resources. If you do come across someone who is curious about recovery, you have that small window of time to make that impact. And we just want to make sure the people that are dealing with, so there's a list of community organizations that I'm involved with that want this training for their volunteers and for their staff, to begin having the language around recovery and promoting that.
Where can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram, My Spiritual Recovery and Last Call Coaching. You can find me on LinkedIn, and you can email me, text me, call me, WhatsApp me, find me in the forest if you can.
The treehouse on the ocean front. That's Kimberly there.
Yeah.
All right, Kim. Thanks so much for joining us tonight, and we'll let you go. Take care.
Thank
Take
you.
care, Kimberly.
Thanks.
Thank
Bye
you.
for now. Bye.
Okay, if you got anything out of that episode, please click that like button at the bottom of the screen. Drop us a comment. Let us know your thoughts. You can also shoot me an email if you have any ideas or suggestions for a show, Daniel@hardknockstalks.com. If you're not already subscribed, hit that subscribe button. Turn on notifications. We go live as much as we can. We're uploading new videos all the time. That's all I got for you tonight. Take care, everyone.
Say, this is Hard Knocks Talks.